Peppa Pig has so many theories circulating on the internet, and in today's video, we're going to look at some of them. One of the most popular Peppa Pig theories is about the original Peppa Pig being replaced by a fake one. This theory started after the creators of Peppa Pig released a family photo of Pig Family. In it, we can see the whole Pig family gathered. As we know, the Pig family consists of 4 members: Daddy Pig, Mummy Pig, Peppa, and George. But in the image, there are 5 family members present instead of 4. When we look at the window on the ground floor of the family's house, we can see a 3rd pig looking at the family members outside. To this day, this is something that the creators of Peppa still haven't explained well, and it has been puzzling all fans in a disturbing way. After all, is she trapped? How many Peppas are there? Moving on, another popular theory circulating on the internet is that George is adopted. As we know, the full name of main character of the show is Peppa Pig, and she is referred to as such by several characters in the show. However, when it comes to her brother, we practically never hear anyone referring to him as George Pig. Similarly, the parents of the two always have their last names spoken when they are mentioned, always being called Daddy Pig and Mommy Pig. So, does George not have the last name Pig? If that's not his last name, then what would it be? George's last name is never mentioned in the show. But in the episode Edmund Elephant's Birthday, Peppa's family receives a mail with an invitation for George, inviting him to attend the birthday party of Edmund Elephant. In the invitation, they refer to him by his full name and use the surname Pig at the end, George Pig. However, if you stop to analyze, perhaps Edmund's family simply assumed that George had the last name Pig and put it on the invitation. This idea is supported by the fact that we never hear anyone in his family calling him by the last name Pig. If we look closely at the show Peppa Pig, we can see a fun pattern with the names of the characters. Almost all the kids have names where the first letter of their first name matches the first letter of their last name, which also tells us what kind of animal they are. For example, take Edmund Elephant. His last name is Elephant, and both his first name and last name start with the letter E. The same thing happens with his sister, Emily Elephant. There are other characters that fit this pattern too. For instance, Peppa Pig has both her first and last name, starting with the letter P. Then we have the twin sisters, Peggy and Pandora Panda, who also start with P, just like Peppa. And we can't forget Pedro Pony, whose name follows the same rule. We can also look at the entire rabbit family. This family includes the 2 youngest members, who are named Rose and Rob, and their older siblings, Rebecca and Richard. All of them share the last name Rabbit. Other examples of this naming pattern include Susie Sheep and Danny Dog, who also have matching initials for their first and last names. However, Peppa's little brother is named George Pig, and that's where things get a bit different. His initials are G and P, which don't match like the other characters. If George had always been part of the Pig family and they picked his name, they might have chosen a name that also starts with P. Of course, it's possible that George was adopted and already had his name from the orphanage, which would explain why it doesn't fit the pattern. But we also have other characters who don't follow the same rule, like Peppa and George's cousins, Chloe and Alexander. To be honest, this theory doesn't have enough evidence to support the claim, but it really adds an interesting twist to his character. Moving on, now let's talk about another popular theory, and the theory is concerned with none other than Madame Gazelle. In the episode Pumpkin Party, Madame Gazelle strangely did not have a reflection in the mirror, which was even noticed by the narrator. She also stated in this episode that Susie's vampire costume reminded her of the olden days. This caused people to theorize that Madame Gazelle was a vampire. Also, in the episode Madame Gazelle's House, there is an old Christmas tree next to her house, causing it to be wonky. When Mr. Bull climbs the tree to check if there are any living beings, he finds bats. Madame Gazelle says that her friends the bats have reminded her of the old days. Also, since the Christmas tree is very large, and Madame Gazelle had owned it since it was a little tree, this implies that Madame Gazelle could be immortal. These 2 episodes have spooked people out, and show in a subtle way that the Peppa Pig franchise is darker than we may have expected, and that there is indeed a backstory. The predators in the shows are secretly carnivorous. As we know, in Peppa Pig, we have different animals that are predators in real life. For example, when the children visit the zoo, they find out that the 2 workers who care for the animals are named Mr. Lion and Mrs. Crocodile. The kids, being so innocent, aren't scared at all. In contrast, Madame Gazelle feels more and more afraid as she realizes that these wild animals are so close to her. This shows that the teacher knows exactly what these animals are capable of. Another example from the show highlights how some animals behave like their real-life counterparts. In one scene, Daddy Pig and Daddy Wolf decide to go on a picnic, but first, they have to cross a river in a boat. As they travel, Daddy Wolf keeps mentioning how hungry he is and looks at Daddy Pig in a rather unusual way. Although he might just be eyeing the picnic basket, the context suggests he has a much different idea in mind, like wanting to eat the soft and gentle Daddy Pig. But since this is a children's cartoon, that doesn't actually happen. This raises an interesting question. How do these predator animals manage to control their natural instincts and not act on their wild impulses? Maybe they don't. Maybe they do secretly eat meat. But they are just pretending to be friendly so that it is easier for them to hunt these animals. Everyone knows that Mrs. Rabbit is the character in Peppa Pig who has the most different jobs. It's pretty amazing. She has over 90 different jobs listed so far. However, many fans get a bit mixed up and think that Mrs. Rabbit is actually Rebecca's mom. But that's not correct. In reality, Mrs. Rabbit is the aunt of Peppa's friend, because she is the twin sister of Mummy Rabbit. This becomes clear in the episode called Mummy Rabbit's Bump. In that episode, we see both Mrs. Rabbit and Mummy Rabbit at the hospital. Mrs. Rabbit is working as a nurse, while Mummy Rabbit is there to have her twins. Speaking of twins, this brings up another question. Just how many rabbit sisters are there? We know that rabbits tend to have a lot of babies, like Mummy and Daddy Rabbit, who have 4 children, Rebecca, Richard, and the twins, Rose and Rob. But what about Mrs. Rabbit? How many sisters does she have? Interestingly, when the pig family travels to France, they meet a character who looks just like Mrs. Rabbit and does many of the same jobs. This French version of Mrs. Rabbit, who calls herself Mademoiselle Léal, which means Mrs. Rabbit in French, is a souvenir seller, a helicopter pilot, and even a professional rescuer. But wait, there's more. It seems that Mrs. Rabbit might have other sisters in the United States too. When Peppa and her family go to Hollywood after finding a golden ticket to be in Super Potato's movie, they arrive in New York. They actually fly there in a plane piloted by Mrs. Rabbit. As soon as they land, they meet another Mrs. Rabbit, but this time, she's American. Just like the other rabbits, she does many jobs. She's a taxi driver, an elevator operator, and even sells ice cream. As Peppa and her family travel on their way to Hollywood, they keep running into more Mrs. Rabbits in different places. This makes us wonder, is this rabbit family really spread all over the world? Or do all adult rabbits just happen to look and sound the same? It's funny to think about how Rebecca might grow up to have a life like her aunts. So, these were some of the theories we found about Peppa Pig, and as always, we'll see you all in the next video.